We are here. Our hot tea's at the ready. Kaylee, what leaves did you make that with?
I don't think it's the White Jade. I'm going to say 90% confident.
Is it that stuff that you picked out of the backyard?
It might have been.
What do you mean it might have been?
I mean, I wouldn't really call it a yard so much as a mulch patch.
Do not hesitate to drink the tea from the mulch patch.
Can
Mulch
confirm,
patch, mulch
90%
patch.
positive. It is not poison.
Mulch patch, mulch patch, mulch patch, mulch patch.
So here we are.
You are listening to Atlas Shrugged, the Avatar The Last Airbender podcast. I'm Kaylee? Oh, no. I'm sorry. I had your paper.
I'm Kaylee.
And I'm AJ. And we are two married folks talking about Avatar The Last Airbender.
It's my favorite show.
And I've never seen it. So we're watching episode by episode, kind of breaking it down. I'm giving my first impressions. And Kaylee's bringing her 17th impression.
So we just kicked off book 2, episode 2, The Cave of Two Lovers.
Let's dive right in.
So, AJ, this episode begins with Katara, our octopus teacher.
Love a good octopus teacher.
And all the kids hanging out in the lagoon in the underpants.
In their underpants, and it's so idyllic, you know. I thought as soon as I saw the Archie land mass formations, I was just like, oh man, we are in for a fantastical episode.
And if you remember, we are still on our journey to Omashu. So we left the kind of unkind welcome of the Earth Nation in the last episode, and this episode, Team Avatar, Gaang, if you will, decides they're going to do it on their own.
But we've still got our sights set on an Earth Nation city, right? Omashu?
Yep, heading straight to Omashu. Do you remember why?
Because Aang has to learn earthbending.
Exactly, and who better to learn earthbending from than King Boomy himself?
I love Boomy.
I love Boomy too. But let's stick to this episode. So who do we happen upon as the kids hanging out in the underpants in the lagoon? Who happens upon them?
Who happens upon them is this band of just lovely people. This whole group of traveling bards, right? Of musicians.
Exactly. What kind of people are you?
Oh, we're just people.
Quite musical people. So this, I've been telling AJ the whole time, is the first real dive into the jingles that become somewhat regular in the show. So thank you, Chong, and the other nomads for bringing your guitars and your legends.
And folks, longtime listeners know I like to make up little songs about Avatar that we're talking about and just put them in the in the podcast. When I first asked Kaylee, who again has seen all of this, hey Kaylee, I want to come up with a little silly jingle and put it in the show. She was like, yeah, do that. So, now I see why. So anyway, the traveling band walks up to them and basically asks them, who are you and why are you at our watering hole?
Yeah, and Aang is excited to meet some nomads. They're obviously not airbending nomads from 100 years ago, perhaps like the ones he knew, but he is clearly excited to meet some people who come from his lifestyle.
I think the excitement kicks in as soon as the embarrassment wears off. They approach the waterfront and they kind of catch him unawares and, catch Sokka without any clothes.
I think Katara actually calls him, hey, naked man.
Hey, naked man, yeah. Can I just say offhand that I want Momo undies? I want tight briefs with Momo's face right in the unmentionables. Can I rewind? Can I say something that doesn't sound as bad?
Probably.
I'm not going to.
Momo's eyes on your keister, right?
Yeah. We'll do that just to be a little more respectful towards Momo.
So this group poses some important questions that I think we should think about as we're going through this episode. The first one was, what kind of people are you? And how these different lifestyles kind of come together to make it through this, what we learn is a labyrinth, not just a tunnel. Katara asked the group, is this a true story or is it a legend? And Chong responds, oh, it's a real legend.
Which doesn't answer the question at all.
I absolutely think that it does. Until, a few hundred years ago, the primary way that we spread stories was through song and traveling bards, storytellers. And so I think even though it comes across in a silly tune, it's important that we trust what the song and the story say.
I like that. So I'm a nomad, he's a nomad, she's a nomad. We're all nomads, except for Iroh and Zuko, right?
Exactly.
They're fugitives. They're wanted by the law.
Enemies of the Fire Nation.
But they have the same clothes on.
No, they don't. They cut off their hair.
Oh, they cut off their hair. Yeah. Okay, so they're not really going around as Fire Nation people.
They're wearing green, which tells you what?
That they're Earth Nation?
At least.
So they're posing as Earth Nation?
They're posing as Earth Nation because they are on the run from the Fire Nation. They're now fugitives in Earth Nation territory. And while, as we'll learn through these two episodes, the influence of the Fire Nation is really spreading, they're starting to take over and colonize different cities and different areas of the Earth Nation. However, it appears that Zuko and Iroh have found themselves somewhat safe in an Earth Nation territory.
And the first thing you do when you get introduced to a Fire Nation territory is check out the sampling of the local teas.
So this does a couple of things for me. Number one, I just love Iroh, and his love of tea is unbeatable. But it also tells you, that Iroh used to be a general in the Fire Nation army.
If Iroh was alive right now, his Instagram would just be like a bunch of like different china cups of like different tea that he had and like different little plants that he saw, and he's giving 10 out of 10 reviews to every single on every single post. It just says 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
And does that show you that while he is more familiar with this land than Zuko, he's still a foreigner. He's been to the Earth Nation because he used to fight in the Fire Nation army. And so he recognizes some of these plants, but not well enough to know whether or not they're poison or the thing that he hopes it is.
But he loves tea so much that he figures, hey, why not just roll the dice?
Worth it. So They roll the dice. Doesn't go too well.
Doesn't go too well at all. He even makes that point. He's like, is this delicious, delectable tea or poison? I don't know. Let's find out.
So
anyway, so we cut back to the folk. They say, hey, we got to go to Omashu. Omashu, right? Not Onashu.
Omashu.
Omashu.
Yes.
We got to go to Omashu, and we're out of ideas. And they say, no. We've got an idea. There's something we know about that you might not. The power of love. It's the secret tunnel.
And at first, like, no one on Team Avatar is convinced, right? They're like, Appa doesn't like underground. We just have to do whatever makes Appa most comfortable. And cut to literal fireballs being just thrown at them through the sky. So
yeah, it becomes a lot more urgent really quickly.
They're realizing very quickly how occupied the Earth Nation is. They're not going to be able anymore to just fly over cities on Appa. They'll be spotted super easily. So secret tunnel it is.
Secret tunnel it is. And you know what? Curse be danged.
And you see Sokka this whole time trying to keep his, he's the pillar of reason, of scientific inquiry. He wants to know all of the facts. And the fact is they didn't say anything about a curse until they're walking into the tunnel. Cut
to my favorite, Iroh, learning the hard way that tea was no bueno. And the cream that she's putting on him to like soothe the allergic reaction is like just the worst looking stuff you've ever seen. It's like the color of the Statue of Liberty. I'm like thinking like, ooh, that's like a treatment for that. Anyway, so they get Iroh all done up and they make tentative dinner plans.
And this scene with Zuko and Iroh and the kind Earth Nation herbalist maybe, who not only invites them to dinner with roast duck because her mother always makes too much, but this is one of those moments where I think the show does such a good job between the artwork team and the voice acting team. Like every time they're making up their fugitive names on the spot and that girl just Mushi and Junior, huh? Like it makes me laugh.
Doesn't suspect a thing.
It makes me laugh out loud. Her eyes are so wide and innocent. Like the voice acting team did such a good job of giving life to those characters.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So then we cut over to the adventurers, the nomads, and they're committing to this tunnel thing, right?
Yep. They've entered the tunnel.
And the Fire Nation is on their heels.
But the Fire Nation, I don't know what he is, a captain or whatever. He's the head of the brigade that is following them. Number one, you see, again, these tanks that seem really out of place in where, like, historically you think the world is most of the time. Then you see this, like, crazy technology that only the Fire Nation has. They are rolling up on them with tanks.
Oh, so it's like futuristic technology, like meeting the sort of primitive ways of the Fire Nation?
Yeah, it's displaying what might and power they have over these other nations that don't have that type of technology.
It's kind of like when the United States would be like, oh, hey, look, there's an island right next to a country that we want to pester a little bit. Why don't we civilize these folks?
That is, I think, a good direct comparison.
Okay.
But even with their power, their tanks, they're rolling up on them. They get to the entrance of the cave and the guy's like, wait, haven't you heard the song?
So even with all that technology, all that military might, they're still like, oh, but this history, this reality of this myth is still strong enough in their minds to give them second thought.
Yeah, it is a real legend. It makes sense that Katara and Sokka, who grew up at the South Pole, wouldn't have heard of it, and Aang, who has been gone for 100 years, might not have heard of it. But this is something cross-cultural. People know about this tunnel.
And it's as old as earthbending itself.
What they don't know about the tunnel is that if you were to enter it, you would be treated to basically a full set from the oud. You know that instrument? Am I confusing you by saying oud? It sounds like an oud. His stringed instrument that's like kind of like a lute. It's like the Eastern version of a lute.
Oh, it's It probably is that. I called it a guitar earlier, but.
And in a crazy moment of accidental foresight on my part, our little theme song has an oud.
Oh, really?
Yes.
See how little I have to do with the music.
It's all over. It's all over the score. Like no matter what episode you're on.
Two lovers forbidden from one another.
We're going spelunking.
So the group sets off. They encounter quite a few things in the cave. Sokka is annoyed at this Bard's group the entire time. They're just not being helpful in Sokka's mind. They are come upon by a group of wolf bats. After traversing this labyrinth for maybe hours already, and Sokka is making a map as he goes.
He's trying his best to have a plan.
Because he's the plan guy. And he looks at his map, they've gotten nowhere, they get to another dead end, and everyone starts to call him out on it, and he's like, there's only one explanation, the tunnels are changing. Which sounds wild, right?
Yeah, that's not what's happening, right? That's not what's happening.
But you know what? Sokka is generally right about his plans, so we'll keep.
It's like going out into a parking lot and not remembering where you parked and being like, they moved my car.
But these are kids, like, following this group of very eclectic musicians into a deep, dark cave, and they've been told that there's a curse and that you will get lost in the labyrinth forever and die. But they do it anyway.
Hate that. Mm-hmm.
No fear. But then these wolf bats come on them. They drop one of the torches and burn poor Appa's little toe.
Womp womp.
And in those moments, like a lot of cartoons, the animals or animal-like creatures that are in it are often given more human-like attributes. Or
yes.
I love these moments with the Gaang animals because Appa is just a big old bison and they hurt his toe. And so he loses control and he just starts like running into the rock walls and crap. And another collapse happens, separating Gaang into two groups.
So who's in each group? We have Aang and Katara.
And Appa.
And Appa. In one group. Appa doesn't really have a say. Like we can try to decipher what's on his mind, but he's not going to be whipping out his phone, pulling out Google Maps.
No. And then that strands Sokka with the rest of the musicians.
Yeah. And Sokka is like, oh my God, not these guys. And they keep playing music. And I want to give a little mention to the people who really like the score of this show. I am one of those people who is really digging like how the score of this show develops and uses clever little devices. And here we get what I'm calling not a reprise, but a pre-prise of the Love That's in Your Heart melody, which was it was super cool to hear. Playing in the background, background music.
Even if you're lost, you can't lose the love because it's in your heart.
Your heart. So now they're split up. We don't know what they're going to do in the tunnel. We cut back to Zuko and Iroh taking the Earth Nation folks up on their offer for some hot eats.
Yeah, they're fugitives. Zuko came back with a teeny tiny little fish on his spear. They obviously needed some hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
We've got royal...
Iroh's wasting away.
And just blowing up from anaphylaxis. But so they sit down. This is the moment where Zuko's arc begins to change. He was on one path. He's been the main antagonist until this point in the series, but now he's a fugitive. We've been introduced to his sister, Crazy Princess Azula. And now as the fugitive, Lee, or Junior, he has what I think he will come to see as an opportunity to learn a different perspective on the Fire Nation, of which he is still a prince, a banished, wanted prince, but he is still royalty in the Fire Nation.
Still a prince.
And for the first time, he hears from somebody on the other side who has been affected by this war, says they came and they took all of the men, and that was the last time I saw my father.
And he's like, me too, kind of.
Yeah. She says, oh, is your father fighting in the war too? And all he can say is yes. I think you actually said out loud, AJ, he is the war.
Yes, he is the war. It must just be like a come down to earth moment for Zuko, no pun intended, when he hears that, because he's coming face to face with the devastation that's caused, and he doesn't have a shred of self-righteous indignation backing that emotion. He just sees the senselessness of the Fire Nation through the eyes of someone else.
I think he's starting to see it. I think later in the episode that moment really happens. We'll talk about that when we get there. But right now, I think this is really more motivated by self-preservation. He needs to protect his identity, and he can't show any, soft-heartedness. He can't show any loyalty. What word am I looking for?
Vulnerability?
Yeah, he can't show any affection for the Fire Nation in this situation. He's being hosted by two Earth Nation people who've just fed him, who've just saved his uncle Iroh from certain death by poison. And he is being hit with this new information and this new perspective, but he can't respond because he doesn't know how to respond in an empathetic way to that.
No, and the ways that Zuko likes to respond to things is burn it to the ground, and he's not going to do that. He just got free duck.
Exactly. So they enjoy dinner.
Yum, yum, yum.
What's happening in the cave?
Two lovers forbidden from one another. A war divides
So
their
let's look at
people.
Aang and Katara first. They're traversing this cave. They come across a big circular doorway that's closed and think, oh, it's a way out. Appa headbutts.
It's not very effective.
Turns out it's not a way out, but it is an ancient, massive tomb. 2, the Cave of Two Lovers, the two lovers spoken of in the legend.
Legends are real.
And this is cool. I love when the episodes take like a diversion from the typical artwork style. So here it dives into the legend. Katara
And we get a
points
little
out,
scroll art. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, she
Yeah, I
points
like
out,
that
look,
too.
these pictographs tell their story.
Uh-huh.
And then we learn about Oma and Shu, who were 2 Earth Nation people.
Where have I heard that name before?
I know, right? So they were in love, but they were in warring tribes.
Like Romeo and Juliet.
And so they built a labyrinth so that they could find each other even in the midst of war. But one day, Shu doesn't show up, and Oma discovers that he was killed. And having learned earthbending, so that's what you learn. These 2 were the original earthbenders.
They're earthbenders, yeah.
They learned earthbending from the badger moles. And so we are to believe then that she has great power that others in the Earth Nation had never seen at that point in time. So
Well, yeah, she could build a whole tunnel without anybody knowing.
right. And in grief, who's texting ya?
I got super excited because I thought it was my PlayStation saying that it was ready for me to receive, but it wasn't. It was something boring.
Dang it.
Yeah, I know. So let's go back to the tunnel.
Back to the grief. So we learned that Oma had a great display of power, and instead of destroying the people, she raises a city, and it was so named Omashu for the 2 lovers.
Aww.
Isn't that so nice?
That's so nice. I want to name a city after you.
That is so nice.
Yeah. It'll be called Kalandia.
Well, here's my question for you then, AJ. If it was a choice between kissing me and dying, which would you pick?
Can you give me a little bit to think about it?
Oh my.
And a mountain divides them apart.
So Katara has a great idea. She's like, hey, we just read that story.
Uh-huh.
And this idea is wild. I mean, it's kooky. It's crazy. But
What if we kiss?
what if we kissed? I mean, the statues are kissing. It says trust and love. And you see at the very beginning, like right before they walk in the cave, the answer is you have to trust and love. And Aang gazes at Katara and his eyes, flicker. And that we know that he loves her. We know that they love each other, but their love is friendship and family.
Sort of related question. Would that door have opened if Aang had kissed Appa?
Maybe.
I mean, there's love there.
The world may
They're
never know.
friends. I'm sure there's a fan fiction about it somewhere out there.
But this is... oh my. But this is like, I don't know, you saw the beginning of Aang's crush on Katara in the fortune teller episode, and Katara realizing like, oh, she's going to marry a powerful earthbender.
Right.
That's what the fortune teller tells her. But Katara buys into it for sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But even though they've already beat the Fire Nation once, they corrected the moon problem and have done all these incredible things together so far, they're still kids. And the broaching the subject of, I kind of like you, is hard.
Exactly. And I feel like this is our first... Is this our first thing where their emotions are not a secret from each other?
Yes.
Ah.
It's the first time that they start to open up that door a little bit.
Cute.
So they end on like, Katara's like, I don't know which I'd rather do more. She asked the question, kiss me or die. And he's like, come on, I'm saying it's a compliment. She's like, nope, now I don't know. She's like, oh my God, mortified.
She's literally scared to death.
IRL, I could die right now.
Yeah.
So they just keep walking.
They keep walking. How awkward.
We cut to
Reminds me of prom.
what happened at your prom.
Let's just say no secret doors were opened.
What?
I did not. I don't know. I spent prom with the fellas, all right? If you must know.
So you did not walk into a secret cursed cave with a girl.
Can't say that I did, no.
Okay.
Let's cut really quick over to the other group.
And Sokka, who is diligently thinking of ideas, keeps leading them in what everyone says are
like
circles.
He does, yeah.
Chong says quite astutely, "We're thinking of ideas? I've had an idea for like an hour." Sokka, exasperated, yes, we are all thinking of ideas. When another herd of wolf bats flies through the cave. But it's not them that they should be worried about. It is, in fact, the tunnel changers themselves, the badger moles.
Yeah, what they're running away from. That's the real problem.
Right. So the badger moles break in, and we discover, as the badger moles come into the cave, that they love music. So Sokka just kind of twangs on, what do you call it, an oud?
An oud. I think it's an oud. If it's not an oud, we want to hear from you. Or I could just look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's an oud.
Badger moles hate the wolf bats, but love the
I love his little
sounds.
improv song there. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. So they make friends with the badger moles. Turns out the badger moles love music.
The badger moles are like, play Skynyrd!
And while Aang and Katara's story is cute, this, I just think, shows that Sokka doesn't need bending. He is the planner. He can be adaptable. They didn't know the music was going to save them, but writing out on badger moles like the original Earthbenders is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So, what happens next?
Then we get this great scene from Zuko and the girl, the Earth Nation girl.
Yeah, and he's obviously in an angsty state. He's sitting out brooding.
When is he not in an angsty state?
He's brooding on the porch by himself, and she comes out and sits next to him and tries to show him, like, hey, I understand. I know you've been hurt.
I feel your pain.
And he's like kind of just ignoring her. He stops her from touching his scar.
Right.
And then she's like, no, really, and pulls up her pant leg. And that, I think, is the moment when Zuko really starts.
That's when it hits him.
He's like, that's like the moment he realizes he's been abused. Because up until you see that expression on his face, it is his shame and pride to factor. He is a prince of the Fire Nation. He believes in what the Fire Nation is doing. But he's been hurt, and that is his shame because he feels at fault.
I had never thought to think of Zuko's story in terms of abuse, and I think that's really astute.
Well, he was only 14. He's 16 now.
Yeah.
He was 14 when his father
It's all he knows.
challenged him to a duel.
Uh-huh.
The greatest firebender in the nation, we are to believe, burnt half his son's face and then kicked him out. I would call that abuse. But yeah, I mean,
Right.
Zuko being raised royal he carried great shame being the banished son. That he's felt this whole time that he needs to restore his honor, that he hasn't fulfilled his duty. He has this obsession with getting the Avatar because that's the greatest gift he can think to give his father.
Aww.
Right? And so even though, he's been trying to kill Gaang, you start to see a little light that maybe some of these people are capable of change.
I think he can do it.
I'm not going to say whether I think or don't think, because I know. But, of course, that doesn't last very long. He is battling with that shame and with that pride, and they have just been shown great hospitality, have been fed when they were starving, and they're leaving. And what does Zuko do? He steals their ostrich horse thing.
Oh my gosh. Right. They didn't come in on those things.
Mm-mm.
What a...
And Iroh tries to say that. He's like, they've just shown you great hospitality. They just fed us. They just welcomed us into their home. And Zuko's like, and now they're going to be a little kinder. Because he's being faced with the real pain and the real damage that his own family has done to these people.
So he does go Dark Zuko in return. He does kind of burn it down in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't like kill anyone, but he takes their livestock.
He is
what a livestock
in these small
taker.
moments deciding over and over again which side he's on. And in that moment, he's Fire Nation.
He's going back and forth, right? Exactly.
But they get away. There's no more allergic reaction.
And they get what they want, and they leave, and the lightning bugs flitter and flatter about.
And to wrap up is the final choice. Katara and Aang's torch is about to go out. They don't have much time left. What can they do?
It's prom night, 2 a.m.
Whoa.
And are you gonna kiss?
It's a little cuter. I love that
it is really cute.
They don't show that moment. They're deciding whether
it's
or not.
in the dark, right?
And you don't know.
It's
you know
pretty.
that they're both cute and happy when it's over, but you don't know whether or not they had that kiss. Only Katara and Aang know that, and I just think it's adorable.
Your mind fills in the blanks, you know?
Yeah.
It's like both of their first kiss. It's certainly Aang's first kiss, unless he had some smooching pre-iceberg, which seems unlikely.
We haven't seen any flashbacks of that, so.
Right. So then everybody's out of the cave, and Sokka comes up to them, and he's like, how'd you guys make it out of the cave, right?
Yeah. And Aang is like, we just like the story says, we trusted in love.
And Sokka's like, okay, we trusted in this badger mole.
This giant beast carved out tunnels for us. And
I don't know what you guys were thinking with all that love and real legend stuff.
But I love, Sokka's not even remotely curious. He's like, Aang has a little cute little like shy look on his face. Like, we trusted in love. And Sokka way over his head.
Uh-huh.
He's just like, really? That's cool.
Do you just tap your heels together 3 times and...
There's no place like home.
Right.
So they end up, this is the closing of the episode, they're walking up the mountain to arrive at the great Earth Kingdom city of Omashu.
Except it is just the shell of what it used to be. It looks like they've got some hostile flags flying.
Fire Nation has arrived.
Fire Nation always comes in and ruins everything. They steal the beasts. They eat the duck without having a tender moment on the porch. They're surrounded by lightning bugs, and they don't say anything about being in the presence of such natural beauty.
Just remember.
What?
Can't lose the love because
Even if you're lost, you can't lose the love because it's in your heart.
So what do you think, AJ?
I hated it. I hated everything about it. No, it was awesome. And you talk about music. You talk about happy feelings. You talk about...
the power of love.
You talk about tea.
So, guys, thanks for joining us. We are going to return to Omashu next time.
I'm really starting to like this show.
I'm so glad. I mean, I'm not surprised, but I'm glad.
Yeah, so I guess we'll see you in Omashu. Thanks for joining us.
Secret tunnel.
I'm AJ.
Secret tunnel through the mountains. Secret tunnel. Yeah.
I'm Kaylee.
Oh, don't let the caving get you down.